Good morning, Mike and Arlen. Our Philippine journey. It might be evening for you. Okay. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you so much for being a subscriber, a viewer, a commenter, being a part of the community. We really appreciate it. Okay. So here we go. Two things here. First off, we're going to talk about the latest release of information from the Bureau of Immigration. But in addition to that, we're going to answer some questions that we get each time we do one of these videos. These are not the standard videos that we do, but we just did one. It had a huge um, views. We got tons of comments, and there were a couple of common questions that people asked. And so we went and we got the information from it. So let's talk about it. Okay. So the Bureau of Immigration, all right, here in the Philippines. Well, you know what? It looks a little bit like this is what they've got. Bureau of Immigration intercepts two foreigners wanted by Interpol. All right, so there's an Australian and a Russian, and both of them were intercepted at NAIA, the Nino Aquino International Airport. Um, and there's not a whole lot really to it, but instead, the comments that we're going to answer are a little bit more relevant. I think that that is more of a information in this one. But I just want to go over this. 37-year-old Alan Strauss, an Australian at NAIA, and 24-year-old um, Zverev Zakin, a Russian at NAIA. So, you know what? It's showing you one of the reasons we show you this is so that people understand it's not as easy as it used to be to get to the Philippines, all right, or any other foreign country, to be honest with you, because of the questions that you asked. The comments that you made actually give us an opportunity to explain why it's not hard. Now, these guys will sit in immigration hold. Perhaps I don't even know if they'll get to detention. They're being deported. Last week we talked about a couple days ago, we talked about the two Americans, but either way, Naia, it happens. But let's answer some of those questions. I think that's what's really relevant here. So the first question that we get often when we report on these things is simply, hey, how did they even get out of the US? And we're only talking about the US here because I'm not familiar with, nor did I research how it works in other countries. So if you're used to, if you'll know what I'm talking about if you have been in an international flight. You go, you check your bags, you check in, you show your passport at the check-in counter. Well, the check-in counter people, the airlines, they don't have access, nor do they check if you have a warrant, if you have a felony conviction, if you're on the 10 most wanted list, they don't check that stuff at all. That's not their job, okay, in the US. Now, so you check in, you've got your boarding pass, now you're going to go through security. So in the US, if you're on an international flight, you're going to go through TSA. You don't go through customs. You go through TSA, and TSA is the Division of Homeland Security. Okay, they do not routinely check. They scan your passport. They're looking at it. Okay, but unless they have a suspicion, a reason, unless they have a gut feeling, they don't have access to certain things. Now, what they do have access to, just so you know, They do have access to Interpol, and that's the one that it automatically scans. So if you are a red flagged Interpol, they'll get you there. But if you're not, you may be on the Interpol watch list, but not red flagged by Interpol. You're good to go. They don't show the watch list. Secondly, think about this for a second. There are hundreds of thousands of people leaving the United States on international flights every 24 hours. There's the ability to scan. If you've been arrested, all right, and not and if you've been in trouble in Butt Lick, Arkansas, that is not going to show up on the federal list. Secondly, not all felonies are federal. So TSA has access to about a half a dozen databases. And I've spoke to TSA about this one time. I asked some questions one time. Those databases are not linked. So they have to check them individually, or they have a program that runs simultaneously multiple databases, but they all have one thing in common, and they are federal. If you have a state or a local county, all right, type of criminal situation, TSA doesn't see it. And if you're wanted, so let's just say, you know what, I'm wanted for murder, but you're innocent until proven guilty in the US. There, unless there's a warrant, a federal warrant out there, they don't catch it. So you go through all the security and everything. You get on the airplane and you arrive in the Philippines. The Philippines has access to the TSA watch list. Okay. So if you haven't made it onto the watch list, you're good. They have access to the um, sexual predators. There's a special list for convicted sexual offenders. All right. But if you're not on that, you're good to go, or they're good to go. I'm not saying, excuse me, I just spilled some coffee here on my desk. I'm not saying these are good things by any way, shape, or means. I'm just saying that person's good to go. And they have access and automatically look at Interpol's red flags. So Interpol red flag. If you're not an Interpol red flag, then the only other way they look at you, the only other reason they look at you is simply because they've been contacted. It could have been that a local or state government agency has said to the Philippine government, we're looking for this guy and we know he's on the way. Can you hold him? And they will. They absolutely will. They do cooperate 100%. They're very active in that. But the likelihood of that is difficult. So they don't have access to the criminal court records at Butt Lake, Arkansas. Now, let's just say, the next question that we get asked quite frequently is how do, I didn't think a convicted felon can get a passport. Well, that's not true. There are multiple examples of that. For those of you that have been around for a while, have known the blogger World Zoom. He had served federal time, I'm sorry, state time for white collar crime. He embezzled like, $1.8 million or something like that. But he did his time. He and he got a passport. Or the other thing that happens is many of these people will travel on somebody else's passport. They will assume somebody else's identity. They look similar. In fact, in the case of World Zoom, he actually stole his brother in law's passport the first time he ran from the law and went to Thailand. So the next piece of this is if you're convicted of a felony in Buttlick, Arkansas, guess what? Not all felonies are federal. In fact, a very small number of felonies are considered federal. And if you aren't on that federal list, if you aren't on this specific lists, nobody catches that. And that's how they end up leaving. Now, how it works in other countries, I don't know. I can't give you an answer to that. And I'd be talking BS if I thought I could. But I do know that that's how it works in the US. First off, you have to have a federal conviction. And even then, nonviolent white collar crime federal convictions don't disqualify you at all from getting a passport. The Philippines doesn't see them at all. And that's just the bottom line. So that's how these guys are getting into Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, Laos, all right, Vietnam. It's the same thing. So you've got to be pretty high up on the list, so to speak. You've got to be wanted by Interpol, number one. Number two, you've got to have been egregious enough that the local government unit, if Arkansas wants you, they're going to contact the Philippines and they're going to say this person. And that's what happens sometimes. They find out this guy's living in the Philippines. They contact immigration and say, hey, if indeed you have the time and effort and everything else, this is the information we have about this guy. Could you help us detain him? The other part of this is that there are federal agents working with the Philippines, stationed in the Philippines, so that they can be a part of. I don't think they're gun toting. I don't think they're allowed to. I have no idea, actually. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. There are federal agents that are stationed in the Philippines that help with these apprehensions and deportations. So that answers a couple of questions. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope that the information, this is not our usual type of stuff, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Otherwise, please do subscribe, hit that thumbs up, and have a safe, great day.